Lorenzo Garompolo graduated in 2019 in Foreign Languages and Cultures with a thesis on post-apocalyptic media, whose title was L'assenza nella fantascienza post-apocalittica. He is currently a student in Foreign Languages and Literatures at the University of Calabria. The title of his presentation today is White Men's Lies, Disassembling Leukocentric Narratives.
Thank you for the introduction. So, let's start. What is the definition of the word leukocentric? It is a term that I coined, a neologism that can be used as a blanket term to define commonly used tropes and commonly represented narratives in literature and cinema. As you can read by the definition on the screen, under the term fall concepts such as the Prospero complex, the white savior complex, which is often considered a natural evolution to the white man's burden, that also falls under this blanket term. Leukocentrism is a narrative disease still present and mostly ignored to this day. The white savior trope is a concept as old as early adventure novels. It represents the story of a white individual who is often made an outcast by his own people, but by being displaced and put in a non-Caucasian context, he, and I say he on purpose as it is often a white male, forms a deep bond with the natives. The natives, however, do not share the same importance given to the character. To the white character. Often the natives must be saved by a terrifying threat or by the evil whites, and the only one that can help them is the white man between the two words. Some of you might be under the impression that this trope is defunct, but I am sure that some plots from movies you have watched sound eerily similar to this stereotypical story. Movies like these on the screen. Lawrence of Arabia already subverted this idea almost 60 years ago, recognizing it as absurdity and inherent hypocrisy as a power fantasy. But despite that, it is still common and still used unwittingly and uncritically. It is not only present in literature or cinema, however. In 2012, film director Jason Russell released a short documentary titled Coney 2012, with the goal of drawing the international attention towards Ugandan insurgent leader and allegedly war criminal Joseph Kony, have him arrested and brought to trial. The documentary is deeply emotional, depicting an idealized and overly simplistic version of reality in which by taking down a convenient villain, Africa will be cured miraculously of many of its endemic problems. As journalist and writer Teju Cole puts it in his article on the matter, from the colonial projects to Out of Africa to the Constant Gardener and Coney 2012, Africa has provided a space onto which white egos can conveniently be projected. It is a liberated space in which the usual rules do not apply, and nobody from America or Europe can go through Africa and become a godlike savior, or at least have his or her emotional needs satisfied. Many have done it under the banner of making a difference. Coney 2012 behaved like an outlet for many so-called slacktivists. Oh, sorry. There it is. Slacktivists. Just a moment. Wanting to make a difference by doing little to nothing, only to feel cleansed and redeemed, ignoring the fact that they live in a system built on pillage, quote unquote. Helping in a self-serving manner is the essence of the white savior. Let us go back to the origins of this trope by analyzing its precursor. Briefly, I will show you a section of Kipling's poem, White Man's Burden. Take up the white man's burden and reap his old reward, the blame of those you batter, the hate of those you guard, the cry of those you humor slowly toward the light, why brought you us from bondage, our loved Egyptian night? As we can read from this section only, the colonizer is despised by those he attempts to help. He has a position of power over the colonized. His whiteness has an intrinsic value that puts him above the colonized. And this brings us to one of Kipling's most important works, Kim, 1901. Set during the Second Anglo-Afghan War, it follows the story of Kim Baloara, a half-Indian, half-Irish child, capable of fitting into every context through his talents as a social chameleon. The question I have used as a title is Kim a leukocentric narrative? After all, it does show different cultures and a varied population. The concise Oxford Companion to English Literature even praises it for its detailed portrait of the multicultural Indian subcontinent. However, having a varied cast of characters is not enough to prove that it is unaffected from leucocentrism. Right from the start, we are made aware by the author that, though Kim was born black as any native, though he spoke the vernacular by presence and his mother tongue in a clipped, uncertain sing-song, though he consorted on terms of perfect equality with the small boys of the bazaar, Kim was white, a poor white, of the very poorest. This is said in the second paragraph of the first chapter. Kim is, despite his appearance, despite the place he was born in, despite everything, still white. This is not a simple description of the character. How do we know that Kim's ancestry is so important and non-negotiable? Juniper Ellis, in her essay Writing Race, Education and Ethnography in Kipling's Kim, quotes a letter by Kipling himself to Josh F. Burns. It states as follows. There is no need to talk of loyalty among white men. That is one of the things that we all take for granted, because the empire is us, we ourselves. And for the white man to explain that he is loyal is about as unnecessary as for a respectable woman to volunteer the fact that she is chaste. Like yourself, I am a colonial, in that I was born in Bombay, but it has never occurred to me to say that I am loyal, because like you I am a white man, and one can step out of one's skin. Loyalty is a defining trait that apparently other races can only learn, but what white people are naturally born with. Loyalty to the British Empire is not a matter of picking a side. For this very reason, Kim has no choice. His talents, his intelligence and skills are not truly his. They are an inheritance from his white father who served in the British military. In the same fashion, Kim will serve the British as he is white, and whiteness makes him innately loyal to the empire, innately a part of it, and innately a tool for it to be used. The character of the Babu instead, a cultured and intelligent Indian spy for the British, struggled and struggles to be a part of the British government, to learn about British culture and literature. He chose to be loyal to the British Empire, trained to be competent at a very difficult task, suffered the ridicule of being known as Babu, a term here that is used as a derogatory for an Indian person working for the British. Kim, on the other hand, is bound by his whiteness to be loyal to the British Empire, bound by his ancestry to be a spy. That is his white man burden. So to answer the question I have posed, yes, Kim is a leukocentric narrative. The main character, despite being so young, is made to have talents, skills and status that characters like the Babu have achieved after years in service in the British spy network, only because he is white. For good or bad, whiteness is central in the story of Kim, a merit and a curse. In analyzing leukocentric narratives and their origination, deeply rooted in colonial literature and Victorian adventure novels, a common recurrence is the presence of a white individual in a position of great advantage over natives, ruling over them. This situation occurs in two works that we have analyzed this year, She, by H. Rider Haggard, and Art of Darkness, by Joseph Conrad. The way in which the ruling white is represented in these two works shares some significant similarities. The whites in charge of the natives are respectively Kurtz, the best ivory tradesman in Congo and the first-class man of the company, and Ayesha, she who must be obeyed, a woman of extreme beauty, power and wisdom. Kurtz's earliest self is said to be an ambitious merchant and colonizer, inspired by ideals of colonization as civilization. Marlowe, during the first part of the novel, describes a painting made by Kurtz himself, representing a blindfolded woman holding a torch in deep darkness. This represents the way in which Kurtz sees his work in Congo, casting the light of civilization in a savage pitch-black jungle, putting him in an opposition to the rest of the company, whose sole intense interest is, and I quote, to tear treasure out of the bowels of the land, with no more moral purpose at the back of it than there is in a burglar breaking into a safe. End quote. Ayesha is a sorcerer that has lived for 2,000 years. She belongs to an ancient white people that is long gone, and in her first interaction with Ollie she demonstrates great eloquence and even greater knowledge of the ancient world. knowledge that makes her unbelievably powerful. In her own words, I, whose loveliness is more than the loveliness of the Grecian Helen, of whom they used to sing, and whose wisdom is wider, far more wide and deep than the wisdom of Solomon the Wise. I, who know the secrets of the earth and its riches, and can turn all things to my uses. Why, I say, O stranger, dost thou think that I herd here with barbarians lower than beasts? Both these individuals rule over African natives that they see as inferior, and they both are permeated of a very unsettling and pseudo-divine aura. However, it is discovered that both Ayesha and Kurtz are not godly and goodly as they seemed. Kurtz, after being given a less than profitable sector to extract ivory from, decides to coerce a tribe of natives into following him, raiding other settlements and stealing their ivory. Ayesha, wise and powerful, is incapable of controlling her own passion and emotions. She has killed the man she has loved in a fit of rage. She lies to Leo to pull him away from his wife Fonstane, and finally kills her out of jealousy when she sees that Leo still loves her wife more than her. In many a leukocentric narrative, there is a conflict between whites. The natives and the context in which they live are secondary, or nothing more than a background to said conflict. A group of whites, sometimes a single white, fight to protect the natives, although it is out of necessity and selfish reasons. Another group of whites, sometimes a single white, do not care for the natives and are only driven by mischievous and selfish reasons. To see a white individual as a villain in a non-white context could be considered a deviation from the norm and a thought-provoking choice made by the author. It could show that whites can too be evil brutes and that whiteness adds no intrinsic value to their person. However, that is not the case for either She or Art of Darkness. The intrinsic value of whiteness is not questioned, and this is proven by the fact that both antagonists are made to die in dehumanizing circumstances. Kurtz's madness and deplorable actions in the name of greed are born from the darkness of the jungle, a contamination that spreads into his mind and makes him more akin to a brute, and therefore a non-white. His own whiteness and his dignity as a great colonizer are stripped away as Marlowe becomes aware of his crimes. Ayesha's madness and deplorable actions in the name of jealousy and anger are a product of her quote-unquote womanly sensibility, and by the end she is punished by the fire of the Pillar of Life, stripped not only of her whiteness but of her humanity as well, turned into a monkey-like creature. It does not matter how wise and powerful she was before, as her body collapses on the ground. In Kim, She, and Art of Darkness, the centrality of whiteness is rarely, if ever, questioned. Kipling has no interest in questioning how whiteness has given Kim an edge over others. Haggard and Conrad have no intention of problematizing their choices of giving the antagonist a white complexion, as they conveniently take it away from them through brutalization and devolution. A Passage to India by E.M. Forster manages, however, to decentralize and challenge whiteness, setting a story in a colonial context without devolving into a leukocentric narrative. Forster tells a story set in British India, with a precise intent. It does not shy away from the obvious power imbalance between the whites and the others, quote-unquote others. British imperialism took for granted that whites were inherently superior and enlightened, and that it was their duty to civilize the quote-unquote Orientals, and these ideas are problematized and put on the foreground of the text. A Passage to India revolves around the trial against the Indian doctor Aziz, accused of raping a young English woman named Adela in the Malabar Caves. This trial makes the British Empire and its hold on the area tremble, as both the Hindu and the Muslims rally in Aziz's defense, and the racial tensions between the colonized and the colonizer begin to rise. The locals are not the only ones that want Aziz's innocence recognized, led by the social cause of freeing India from British tyranny. Cyril Fielding, British professor and humanist, is a friend to Aziz, believes in his innocence, and defends him wholeheartedly. This causes him to be ostracized by the British, but supported by the Indians. Miss Moore, devoted Christian, mother of the magistrate Ronnie Islop, also believes in Aziz's innocence. However, it is not Fielding's struggle to protect Aziz that saves him from being considered guilty. It is not Mrs. Moore's testimony that sets him free, as she is sent away by her son at the magistrate. It is Adela, during the process, that admits that Aziz is innocent, and the charges against him are dropped. Neither Fielding nor Miss Moore gained anything from helping or wanting to help Aziz. Fielding's humanist beliefs in a friendship that can overcome social and racial boundaries are rewarded with him being driven away from the British club, hailed as a blood traitor, and at the end of the novel, after losing his friendship with Aziz, they have hardened and become less idealistic. Mrs. Moore's Christian love that transcends the borders set by man becomes her undoing as his own son sends her away despite concerns for her health, being the effective cause of her death. No amount of goodwill saves her from being buried at sea, and their Christianity does not save Aziz. Ultimately, the way in which Forster decentralizes whiteness and the possible manifestation of an early form of the white savior trope is by making these two characters ultimately unsuccessful. This is my biography, and I thank you for listening to me.